Good morning, everyone. I'm going to call to order our Subcommittee on General Government. Mr. Clerk, would you mind taking the roll?
Representative Brayback.
I'm here.
Representative Hood.
Present.
Representative Pori.
Here.
Representative O'Neill.
Present.
Representative Steckloff.
Present.
Representative Mincer.
Here.
Representative Bolin.
Here.
Representative Leitner.
Here.
Representative Kuhn.
Here.
Madam Chair, all members of the subcommittee are present.
Thank you. I really appreciate it, Mr. Clerk. Rep. O'Neill moves to approve the minutes from the previous meeting without any objection. The minutes are approved. Thank you, Rep. O'Neill. Today, colleagues, we are going to have our presentation from our treasurer, who is here with us, and also we're going to talk about revenue sharing, which I know for a lot of us from local gov, that's very exciting. So I cannot wait. I know, I'm very excited about that. I am.
I share your enthusiasm.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So I would love to invite our treasurer, Rachel Eubanks. We also have our Treasury Budget Director, Ken Osborne. Thank you so much for being with us. Colleagues, the presentation is on the screen, but you also have it in front of you, so a couple of ways to digest this information. Thanks for being here.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you, Chairman Brayback, members of the committee, for allowing us to present a little update on Treasury and a Treasury budget request for fiscal year 25. And I think you'll find that this is a very straightforward presentation compared to maybe previous years. So, but always happy to invite questions on anything that we present. So, first of all, I always like to kind of step back and think about the department's operations. We're one of the largest and most diverse treasuries across the country, meaning that we have most of the financial functions for the state of Michigan, kind of outside of the expenditure process, which is covered by SBO, is within the department. So everything from administering the taxes and fees, so about $30 billion, which represents 9.7 million tax returns. Of course, this year we've included the mailing of about 640,000 supplemental 2022 EITC checks, which unfortunately I think we're in the last week of mailing those out. So hopefully if you've got questions from constituents on those, it's in the mail, so to speak. We also have jurisdiction over state and local tax policy. We help forecast the economy and revenues as part of the consensus revenue estimating process. We invest the state's retirement funds, which totals, in common cash as well, which totals about $155 billion at this point. We have responsibilities over local school and government financial health. We also help Michiganders realize their higher education dreams through savings plans, either the MET 529 college tax advantage college savings plans or the tuition prepaid Michigan Education Trust or MET plan. We manage the state's relationships with the Wall Street, the rating agencies, its bond issuance, working to manage its relationships with on the balance sheet, as well as returning unclaimed property to Michiganders, which we had another record year of about $138 million returned to Michiganders last year. So, good year. Just as a little bit of background as far as what are these taxes that we're collecting and the responsibilities that we have, I thought this is more of just a fun piece of trivia for all of you to have. Our big two taxes for the state of Michigan is really our income tax and our sales and use tax. I mean, those are, huge, coming in combined about, $25 billion. I like to, present that as just a comparison of scale. If you think about, our motor vehicle taxes and registration fees, which comprise the Michigan Transportation Fund, that's a little under $3 billion. This is fiscal year 22. Our business taxes for corporations is about $1.5 billion as of that year. And then we always get questions about marijuana. So just a little bit of scale here, about $186 million in fiscal year 22. So that's really the major sources of revenue that power state government. As far as this department and our mission, vision, and values, when I first started this role back in 2019, we completely refreshed those. And we took the opportunity last year to refresh them again and make sure that we're still meeting our mission for Michiganders. And I won't read these to you here, but really our focus here is everything that we're doing is trying to make, a more successful state of successful people. And we try to do that through all of our business lines and supporting financial services for the state of Michigan. And critical to our work is our focus on our three pillars of engagement, service, and continuous improvement. So every day, we know that in order for us to do our best work, we've got to have the best people. And that means we've got to recruit and retain and onboard new employees and maintain our current employees and keep that high level of workplace that we're striving to have. We also, believe in service, and you'll see that quite a few of our investment requests today are centered around that culture of service and providing the highest level of service we can to our taxpayers and your constituents. And continuous improvement just means doing our jobs better, a little bit better today than we did yesterday and tomorrow than we did them today. And this is actually a very technical process, and we'll talk a little bit through, how we set those projects, how we did in 2023, and looking ahead to 2024 and our plans for the year. And how do we know that we're doing well and we're getting better? Well, Treasury is a highly, highly metrics-driven department. We try to measure everything that we do and everything that we can. And I'm really proud to say that in my tenure here as treasurer, we pretty much moved the needle positively across the board year in and year out. And I'm happy to say that 2023 was really no exception to that rule, that we've gotten better across the board. The one area where I would point out, and I know I mentioned this to several of you previously, is we did see a small increase in our individual income tax contact center wait times from 2 minutes and 34 seconds in 2022 to 3 minutes and 19 seconds in 2023. And I'm not telling you that because I'm here to ask you for something or additional staff for this area, but just that I'm watching it. And I understand that it's an issue. We'll try to improve internally what we can in order to provide better customer service, but I like to be transparent about areas where I am placing my focus. And of course, we've got a lot of other metrics on this page. I won't read them to you, related to tax compliance, collections, our remaining post-secondary services area, investments, and local government. I'm always happy to take any questions on any of those items if you should have them. So again, talking through our continuous improvement projects, giving a quick update on how we've done since 2023. And you'll see this focus on our culture of service and continuous improvement in all of these slides. So first, we are looking to enhance customer service for our sales, youth, and withholding, which is, business taxpayers, and reducing the amount of letters and correspondence that's necessary to have with the department through, improved training across our staff. So that is something, to try to improve that service and make it less frustrating for taxpayers in engaging with the department. I already talked a little bit about recruitment and retention, how important that is. We also provide low interest cost loans to school districts who need to manage their cash flow needs. We've continued to move towards electronic processes wherever we can. This is not only an environmental goal, but it's something that really we pushed in the pandemic for us to be more efficient. So for us to engage with taxpayers more efficiently, for us to send documentation throughout the department, really shifting from our highly paper-driven to highly electronic-driven processes has allowed us to realize some improvements there. And then also, we know point for frustration for taxpayers can be our IVR system. That's the automated call system that picks up when taxpayers call in, and trying to eliminate some of the frustrating loops that individuals can get in when they're trying to receive assistance on their taxes. So we completed a project on that. Looking ahead towards 2024, anytime we get a new tax that comes in, we try to stand up a continuous improvement process to ensure that we implement it most efficiently on the first try. So we're doing that same process for our heavy equipment tax, which is a new tax, focusing on data retention. When it comes to protecting taxpayer data from bad actors, this is a critical component to ensuring that we're only collecting the data that we need, and we're only collecting the data for the amount of time that is necessary to prevent bad actors from reaching as much data as if we did not do that process. We're continuing to upgrade and modernize our individual income tax systems, and part of the support we received in the previous year's budget was related to standing up city income tax system and doing the same services, the fantastic service and the success that we've seen from the city of Detroit, and making that available to the other 23 communities who have a city income tax available to them. We do have a couple communities in the pipeline, and I'm hoping that we will be able to, next year come back and give you great news that, that we've seen additional cities sign up. We talked about the onboarding process, how important that is. We're in the final stages of our shift from our collection systems to a modernized platform that will improve our experience for both our employees and individuals, debtors who are in the situation. It's a really unique situation to work with us and try to get them current on their tax debts. And also, same thing, more modernization for our corporate income tax and city returns processes as well. Okay, so looking back at fiscal year 24, so we always like to take a, zoom out and think about the entire Treasury budget, which always looks very, very big on first impression, although it's smaller than last year's because we don't have as many pandemic-era grant programs. So this is more of a traditional type look at our budget with a couple of exceptions. So again, the overall budget, about $2.5 billion that comes to Treasury, but we perform mostly a pass-through agency. So we take the dollars that are appropriated for things like revenue sharing and grants, and which is almost $2 billion, and get them to where they need to go. We also are in charge for paying debt service to our investors, so principal and interest on any bonds that we've issued. We are serving as a pass-through for election-related agencies on some of their election efforts. We send out the PILT payments, and these are payment in lieu of taxes. They tend to be DNR properties who are using these PILT payments to make payments to local units of government as opposed to traditional property taxes. I will come back to this local unit pension OPEB program, this $35 million. So when you take all those out, our operations are about $328 million. That includes restricted and unrestricted general fund dollars. When you pull out the restricted piece, you're really left with about $89 million in unrestricted general fund operations. And the next slide shows how that breaks down in terms of our major business lines. I would point out the largest business line here, that dark blue wedge at the bottom of the pie, which is labeled Executive Operations, Communications, and IT. The majority of that is related to IT expenses. We are continuously trying to improve our systems for our customers, for our employees. We try to modernize those systems in order to do that, those IT systems, through efficiencies in our own operations before we ever come and ask all of you for investments. And we do not have a corresponding ITIF request this year, so that you can see how we try to fund those investments that I talked about previously through our own operations. We do have a significant amount of representation on a union basis at Treasury. So we have 1,300 to 1,400 employees within the department. About 441 of those are represented by the UAW. A little kind of trivia question, we also have about 10 in the Michigan State Employee Association Union. And I know folks may not think of Treasury and law enforcement, but we actually do have some kind of enforcement responsibilities related to tobacco tax enforcement. So that's just, if you're wondering, that's why we have that representation in our department. So a couple updates here on the municipal pension grant. So a quick reminder, as in part of the, couple budgets ago, we had a $750 million pension grant program that was designed for local units of government who had unfunded pensions greater than 60% to get them to that 60% funding level. With the valuations that came in, we only needed about $550 million to actually get everyone to that 60% level. And the good news is that really made it through almost every corner of the state. We had 123 communities that benefited, and the average award was about $4.5 million. In the next slide, I'll have some examples on where they were. And now, as part of the residual of that, there's a program that's being designed as part of in the fiscal year 24 budget, about $35 million, which is targeted towards OPEB expenses for local units of government. So, and this is more focused on the annual general fund expenditures piece. So if their defined contribution into their OPEB, so other post-employment benefit, which is usually health care, exceeds 22%, this program will be designed to try to get them down to the 22% level of their general fund expenditures, so ensuring not too much of their city's operations are going towards legacy costs on an annual basis. Again, these are the communities, just a handful of communities. I would love to see a map someday so you can kind of see where all these dollars went. We didn't quite have time to prepare that for this presentation, but this is an example, and the full list is available on our website if you'd like to see them. So for fiscal year 25, we're asking for several investments, which again are really focused around customer service and continuous improvement every year. So on our delinquent tax restricted fund, we're asking for $800,000, which corresponds to 7 FTEs, to improve processing times in our tax discovery area. So the department has a responsibility to safeguard taxpayer dollars and ensure that we're sending refunds and other payments to taxpayers who they say they are. And there is an identity verification process as part of that. We know that that can take some time and be frustrating for taxpayers. So we're proposing this in order for us to bring down those processing times for those taxpayers. So again, we're metrics driven. We like to tell you how we're going to perform. Our goal here is to process 95% of those returns within 60 days. On our next slide, we have a $3 million appropriation request for a My Able marketing program. So if you have not had a chance to, follow this issue, the federal government recently changed the threshold for the age of disability of individuals who qualify for tax advantage savings accounts from the age of 26 to the age of 46. And this expands our universe of Michiganders who qualify for these tax advantage savings programs from about 400,000 to nearly 1 million Michiganders. And of those, about 150,000 of them, we estimate, are veterans. So this allows us to meet people where they are, to engage through new channels to reach these individuals and ensure that they're signing up for these tax advantage savings accounts. And I would just point out that there's no FTEs associated with this request. We're going to repurpose some FTEs to carry out these functions, but it is the marketing budget so that, again, we can reach folks and make them aware that this is available to them. Just a couple other operating changes to talk through. On our unclaimed property side, we talked a little bit a few slides ago about returning a record amount of unclaimed property to Michiganders last year. And part of that is the trend of additional claiming requests that are coming in. So we've seen a 4 times increase in those claims since 2018. And we'd like to request 4 FTEs, which totals about $517,000 in restricted fund money in order to speed up those claim processing times and return their rightful property to Michiganders. We're also requesting 2 additional FTEs for another $262,000 in restricted fund dollars related to a change at the Cannabis Regulatory Agency and how they award licenses. So now requiring that there is no existing tax debts before they issue a license. This is about 600 requests every month, and so those 2 FTEs would help us process those in a more timely manner. We have $420,000 related to IT. This is mostly the hardware costs for the additional systems that we have and we pay to DTMB. And we have a reduction in our line as well. So we had staff that were impacted by the executive reorganization and creation of MyLeap. So $8.9 million and 33 FTEs have been shifted to go to that newly created department. And that's mostly related to tuition grant programs and those type of outreach functions and trying to reach folks. We still will retain post-secondary functions in the form of those tax advantage 529 education savings plans and the prepaid tuition met plans, as those are really more financially and investment driven. Chairwoman Brayback, I appreciate your enthusiasm for revenue sharing. Not everyone shares, the excitement for that topic, but I always like to lead off that conversation. And we do have a technical staff here who's truly an expert in this field to share additional information with you. But some perspective about where revenue sharing has been over the last 25 years or since the millennium. And the last peak that we had in revenue sharing was in 2001. And as the economy declined and we saw state revenues decline as well, the state correspondingly reduced the amount of revenue sharing going towards those local units of government. And as same thing, the economy turned around and revenues improved, those payments began to be restored. But I would just point out that it's been just the last several years of budgets, and including this governor's recommendation, where we're pushing past that nominal basis. And again, these are nominal dollars. These are non-inflation adjusted nominal dollars. We are just now past where we were in 2001, to give you some context of why these increases are needed at the local level. And so just a quick overview of what those changes are. The constitutional revenue sharing component, of course, that is what it is. That's a constitutional calculation just based on where revenues lie. On the statutory side, we have cities, villages, and townships, recommended $322 million with a 5% increase, including a 3% incentive for communities who have spent down their federal pandemic relief dollars, which are expiring at the end of the year, as well as an incentive for public safety expenditures. Kind of a mirroring type of structure for the counties as well, and looking to maintain the very transformational financially distressed cities, villages, and townships grant program at $2.5 million. And that concludes our presentation. I'm certainly happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Treasurer. I really appreciate it. I just want to also acknowledge that we had some students come in, and I'm going to ask Representative O'Neill to do an introduction of those students.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I saw Mr. Harrison leave, but Mr. Harrison and members from Youth Protection Council from Saginaw Interlink are here today. So you guys please stand up.
Welcome. We're glad you're here.
There are a few more students.
That's great.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Hope you're enjoying the Treasury. So. All right, colleagues, who has questions for our treasurer? Okay. Rep. Hood, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is regarding earned income tax credit. We're so excited that those dollars are rapidly being delivered to our families. But there's an ongoing concern that EITC dollars are going directly to debt collectors rather than helping families take strategic steps forward. I'm curious if there's any administrative action that Treasury can take to make sure that families receive those dollars.
Thank you, Representative, for the question. I think we have to look statutorily to see, which types of payments are subject to offset for collection purposes. Off the top of my head, I'm not positive which way one or the other EITC falls, but we're certainly happy to follow up with you to let you know about that. But certainly, if there's the way many of the laws are written, if there's some sort of outstanding debt, yes, if there's payments that go out, they do get collected as part of that process.
Rep. Kuhn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With regard to the municipal pension aspect of things, what is included in the pension liabilities that you're looking at? And does this payment, is this like a one-time payment? You've gotten everyone up to 60%?
Yes. So as part of I think it was the fiscal 22 budget, or 23 budget, thank you, there was a $750 million program that allowed us to bring any community with a liability in excess of 60% up to the 60% level. And how we knew who those communities were is we have a reporting system, a very robust reporting system for local governments around their long-term liabilities, and that's Act 202 that's available to us. And they file, a form with the department, so then it's easy for us to calculate what is their current level of liability and how much, degree to their unfunded nature to get them to that 60%. So using those calculations is how we came up with the award that was available to each community, and again, it totaled around $550 million. Okay,
and so after this year, everyone will be up to 60%?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Representative, if I could just point out, of course, any of these retirement systems are subject to fluctuations in market valuations of the portfolio. So just because we get them to 60% doesn't mean we couldn't see, a negative year of performance in that portfolio, and it may drop below 60%. But as of the conclusion of this program with I think it was their fiscal year 22 local unit valuation data, it's at 60%.
Representative Leitner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is in the later part of your presentation. Well, it's in your same packet. It's in the appendix. Talking about the new secure retirement program, and it asks for, it's a $3 million one-time appropriation. And I'm just curious, who else does something like this? And, how did you come up with that number?
So
because I know there's obviously pending legislation, but I don't know the history of it, and it just... I'm curious if anyone does it.
Yeah, there's a number of programs that have stood up around the country that take on various forms, whether they're, actually mandatory programs or if they're programs that have a marketplace type function. There's a handful of states, throughout the country that qualify for that. I think the $3 million allows, the administration costs as part of that. There could be 800,000 workers who are impacted by the availability of this. So if you think about servicing any type of customer account and what that takes to stand up, the actual IT systems that are in place, the call centers that you have to stand up, the administration of those expenses, and especially in the infancy of those plans before they mature and generate enough returns to become self-sustaining, an upfront support is necessary to get those programs off the ground.
So this is the government running a retirement system, essentially.
Would allow the government to create
a small business,
a marketplace for.
But you're not the marketplace; it's still the government, the Treasury running it, right? Your department, basically.
I think in this situation,
in
it would actually be
managing the portfolio
to outside vendors to perform that function for us.
Thank you,
Representative Bowen.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Thank you very much for being here. So I have a question as it relates again to the pensions. And the communities that have done a good job have been very good stewards ahead of the curve. I'm trying to understand why we have a 3% incentive if you spent more money in your COVID dollars, and we wouldn't consider some of those communities who actually have been good stewards and properly managed their retirement. Why are I'm really struggling to understand that. And is any consideration being given to helping those communities, again, staying on that path of 80, 90, 100% funding?
So to answer your question about, the amount of the incentive and how that's designed. Obviously, the historic amount of federal pandemic aid that was available to, local governments within the state, a lot of that continues to be unappropriated. So, that's federal dollars that would just be leaving the state of Michigan, and we want to try to incentivize behaviors to ensure that we are keeping all those federal dollars in Michigan as opposed to them lapsing back to the federal government.
Right, but some of these, I don't think the evaluation's been done. I mean, if you can't spend the money, I just don't believe you spend the money just because you have the money. I've seen what's happening in some of these just ridiculous projects that increases in staffing, which are dollar amounts, raises, benefits package, are only going to put, I think, more communities ultimately in a further bad position. So I just would, like consideration given to some more investment in the pensions, because at the end of the day, if the locals can't meet that commitment, it is all the general taxpayers. But may I ask a question about the rebates, vehicle rebates also? So there is the Michigan or My Vehicle Rebate Program, and I just trying to understand the program a little bit. So the average car costs for an EV are roughly $11,700 a year. Over a 6-month period, and so it's $978 a month is pretty hefty, more than a mortgage payment for many, including myself. The rebate lowers that payment for a period of 1 year by $166. This is an incentive to get people into electric cars. And then we're also kind of picking if they are union made, non-union made. So why the differentials in it and not just trying to offer everybody some sort of an incentive to maybe get into a car?
Yeah, certainly this is a program that the department is being given to administer, where we'd work with dealerships to give them these payments that are available to them. As far as the policy rationale behind those, this was part of the governor's recommended budget. So we'd be happy to connect you with that policy staff to provide you with greater insights around that policy rationale.
Treasurer, I have one question for you. And actually, I got asked it this weekend, and I didn't know the answer. With the My Able program, if there's an individual who has gained access to that program and is starting that savings account, and then for whatever reason goes to prison, are they able to retain that and then have access to it when they return to our communities?
That's a great question. I don't.
I was like, I don't know.
I'm not sure that I would see a reason why they wouldn't be able to,
Right.
but we can do the research
That'd be
and
great.
get back to you.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Colleagues, are there any other questions for our treasurer? Representative Kuhn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It just comes to mind, the Pew Charitable Trust people came in and talked about the boilerplate on this new secure retirement program. Have they talked to you about that?
We have met with Pew, yes.
And is that a concern, what the current boilerplate is and how it could be improved?
I think, Pew is, as always, they provide wonderful research for policymakers to make decisions around how to design programs. I certainly, think that they are a very useful thinking partner and can hopefully provide their services as part of the budget-making process and the policy development process.
Thank you, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Absolutely. Thank you again for being here. We really appreciate it. And now, folks, revenue sharing. A deeper dive. So we have Juanita Sarles, who is here with us, who's the manager of revenue sharing in Treasury. And so we get to, there's another packet at your place, and the presentation on the screens as well. But welcome. We're excited to dive in.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss revenue sharing with you this morning. My name is Juanita Sarles. I'm the manager of the revenue sharing in the Michigan Department of Treasury.
Is your mic on? Can you lean closer, please? So that
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Sorry. So what is revenue sharing? Revenue sharing is the distribution of state funds to local units. Local units includes cities, villages, townships, and counties. There are roughly 1,880 local units. There are roughly 1,800 cities, villages, and townships, and 83 counties that we distribute this revenue to. Nearly all of the revenue sharing that is distributed to these local units is unrestricted to the local unit, so they can use it for whatever they choose to. There are two types of revenue sharing. There's a constitutional component and there's a statutory component. The statutory component consists of city, village, township revenue sharing, which we refer to as CVTRS. That CVTRS has three components within it, three payments within it, I should say. There's a standard piece, a public safety piece, and a coronavirus local fiscal recovery fund piece, or we refer to it as CLFRF because it is a long term. The other portion of the statutory is county revenue sharing and county incentive program. Constitutional revenue sharing is based on 15% of the 4% sales tax. It is distributed on a per capita basis to cities, villages, and townships. It is based on the 2020 decennial census, adjusted for institutional populations, and it is can be used for any purpose. This next slide is going to depict a calculation of the constitutional revenue sharing. You can see the projected 4% sales tax for '24. We take that times 15%. That gives us an preliminary amount available to distribute. We have an excess amount from the prior year that's due to rounding. We put that in. We divide that amount by the revenue sharing population, which is different from the gross population. That gives us a per capita amount, and that per capita amount is then multiplied by the populations for the individual local units and rounded to the nearest dollar. This next slide gives a sense of the different calculations for revenue sharing for a sample of local units. You can see their revenue sharing populations, the per capita rate, and then the projected constitutional revenue sharing for '24. Something to note, these projections are based on the current consensus revenue estimates. We actually distribute based on actual sales tax collections. This next slide depicts the calculation of '24 to '25. You'll notice there is a slight decrease in the projection. That is due to sales tax collections currently projecting slightly down. So there is a slight decrease you can see there. Again, we will distribute based on actuals, so this again is just a projection. Next, the statutory revenue sharing is the city, village, township revenue sharing. This is the current proposal for the fiscal year '25. We are currently looking at a 5% ongoing increase to the CVTRS standard, a 2% one-time increase for public safety, a 3% one-time increase for the CLFRF portion of the payment. In fiscal year '24, we had a 4% increase, a 2% increase, and a 1% increase respectively for those. For county revenue sharing, we are looking at a 5% ongoing increase for standard, 2% public safety, 3% CLFRF. And then the other statutory revenue sharing is the county incentive program. County incentive program is based on 20% of the county's full funding of the revenue sharing reserve fund. So we talked earlier that the counties or the local units can use this revenue for pretty much anything. So one caveat to that is the public safety. Public safety is limited to the public safety initiatives. Those include employee recruitment, employee retention, training, safety equipment, or employee infrastructure improvements. This next slide gives you a quick summary broken down by the type of local unit, cities, villages, and townships for the CVTRS program. You can see that the cities do receive the bulk of the funding from the CVTRS program. There are 276 cities that receive funding under the CVTRS program, 211 villages, and 149 townships. And there are 83 counties that receive CRS or SIP funding. This next section shows you the calculation of the CVTRS standard, the 5% increase. This does look a little bit, if you're trying to add it across, looks a little different. The FY24 ongoing is based on the standard and the CLFRF. It does not include the one-time portion of public safety amount. So it does look a little bit different when you're looking at it, but that is how the calculations are currently calculated. So this slide 13 represents the standard, slide 14 represents the public safety, and slide 15 represents the CLFRF portions of those, just to give you an idea how that calculation is done. For CRS and SIP, we've talked about the CVT, the city, villages, and townships, so we turn to counties. The CRS and SIP calculation, this is based on the actual amount appropriated for 24, which is the $256 million. So these percentages, if you're trying to calculate that across, the 5% is based on 5% of that $256.2 million. Next, let's talk about the requirements for these. These are incentive programs. The local units do have to do something to get this funding. The requirements for the standard and the public safety portions of these payments, there is a certification form that's required, a debt service report, and a projected budget report. The debt service report includes issuance dates, issuance amounts, the type of debt instrument, a listing of the revenues pledged to fund that debt instrument, as well as the annual payment amounts. The projected budget report includes the current year revenues and expenditures, the upcoming year's expenditures and revenues, and the assumptions used to calculate that projection. For the Coronavirus Relief Local Fiscal Recovery Fund payments, the LFRF payments, local units that had certified in fiscal year 24 will not need to do anything additional. However, local units that have that are still trying to fully obligate or expend or have declined that revenue will need to submit a certification to us by letting us know that they have fully obligated, expended, or declined that revenue by October 1st of 2024. They will have to do that by December 5th of 2024. Sorry, I jumped ahead. The due dates. The next section relates to due dates. For the the standard and the public safety, all local units will receive the standard and public safety payment in October. We then get to the due date of December 5th. Local units that submit by that date will continue to receive the revenue sharing payments for standard and public safety. If a local unit happens to miss that date, they can then still submit that documentation before the next payment date, the first day of the next payment month, so like February 1st. If they submit, they will forfeit December's payment, but they will receive all the remaining payments throughout the year. Now with the CLFRF payment, that is just a single payment, so the due date for that is December 5th. The small caveat with this one is local units have to do the public safety and the standard compliance, and as well as the certification of the CLFRF money to fully obligate, expend, or decline that revenue. That payment we are anticipating making before the last business day of February as a single payment. This next slide shows just a history of the certifications that we've received in the past. You can see from 2015 to 24, the submissions. This last year, we had a really good response from most local units. We had 612 out of 636 local units that submitted by the December 6th deadline this last year. And we have 24 local units that did not submit by December, but we do have 7 that have submitted since then. So they are improving. We do a lot of outreach with the local units. We make sure to send reminder emails, We make phone calls when the due dates are getting close if we haven't received it. So we do try to work with the local units. And if they have questions, we are more than happy to help work with them to get whatever they need to get submitted. We don't want anyone to lose their revenue sharing. This next slide, next two slides actually, show the revenue sharing that was actually forfeited by local units in -- and what we're unfortunately projecting for -- for local units to lose. We're still working on it. We hope that nobody loses their money, but the last two columns indicate the projected amount that local units potentially could lose due to forfeit if they don't submit. One thing to note, forfeits from the CVTRS program and the SIP program do roll into the Financially Distressed City Village Township Grant Program. So that funding is rolled into that program so that local units can try to apply for that program for those funds. Next is our county incentive and county revenue sharing. You can see a history of the appropriations, the full funding amounts, appropriations, the percent funded for the various fiscal years. And then next, we're going to jump to the Financially Distressed Cities, Villages, Township Grant Program. Something to note, this is available to cities, villages, and townships only. It's not available to counties, road commissions. It's only available to cities, villages, and townships. And they have to have one or more indicators of conditions of probable distress. These projects are used to offset specific projects or services, and it's to help move these local units to financial stability. The current recommendation is $2.5 million. We've had $2.5 million appropriated in fiscal year 19 through 24, and no grantee is the maximum amount they can get is $2 million in any fiscal year. The next slide reflects the history of the FDCVT program. You can see that we've had a significant amount of money requested. However, we have very limited funds. We do try to hit the most needed areas, as well as if we can if they can put in some money to try to get some grant funding. We try to work to get money to as many local units as possible. That concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate the breakdown, and the dates are always the part that I want to pass on to our locals too. So, colleagues, any questions? Oh, Rep. Menser.
Thank you, Chair. You know, I guess I just need a little explanation on slide number 7 for constitutional revenue sharing payment calculation. I'm looking at the city of Mount Clemens, and your fiscal year 24 constitutional projection is $1,701,589. Are you telling me that the city of Mount Clemens is going to get that amount?
Yes. This is the projection, the distributions will actually be based on the actual sales tax collections. So if the sales tax collections differ, then the amount that they receive will change, yes. But whatever the collections are times their population would be the calculation of their distribution.
Thank you very much. That makes me happy.
Woohoo! Colleagues, any other questions on revenue sharing right now? Great. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. All right, so next week we'll continue with our presentations. We'll have more, hoping to be able to get through all of our presentations before we break. And if there's any questions, again, please feel free to send them. And we've been sending them to the departments and getting answers, and then are going to be getting those out to you. So always feel free to ask those questions. But seeing no further questions or business, this meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everybody.